Welcome to the Psych Gym. Let's hit the weights. Hello, y'all. Welcome back. I am recording this as a batch recording. What I've discovered is that, I haven't discovered this recently. I've known this about myself. Routine and I are not best friends. If you can believe that. Anybody in my personal life can absolutely believe that because they get it. They've seen me do it. I need the freedom of being able to kind of do things when I want to do them as much as possible. It's not all the time, but as much as possible. And when I started this podcast, I wanted that to be no different. I did not want this to be a chore. I wanted this to be something that was fun. I wanted this to be something that was just about delivering some information to people who maybe need it and can't get it directly from the source by sitting down in front of me, right? So I batch record. That means that I haven't been in front of the microphone or behind the microphone for a couple weeks now. So I'm sitting down to record some more. And it's interesting because I don't even know how long it's been. I can't remember what episode I'm on. So if there's a little bit of you that's like, judges yourself about neurodivergence or, anything like that, I just want you to look at me and see me as an example of somebody who I may not be highly successful in some ways, right? Like I'm not a millionaire and I'm not going to claim to be a millionaire until I become one. But I am living what I feel is a successful life. I have tons of freedom. The business that I've created, the way that my mind works, is a good one. It's thriving. It's funding my life, So, I'm doing it. I'm doing it with my neurodivergent brain, with my brain that's all over the place, with my ADHD that hyperfocuses and sometimes has no focus, and battling the analysis paralysis and all of that kind of stuff. So this is not what this podcast is about, but that's how my brain does things. And I'm still doing a pretty good job, y'all. So if you're feeling like maybe this is something you're struggling with, I want you to have a little bit of hope. Not what I wanted to talk about at all today, but I felt like that was something that I had to say. And that's what I do. I let it flow here. That's what I do in my counseling space too. And so this is what we're talking about on the podcast today. Those of you who found the Psych Gym kind of accidentally may not know me, right? So you may not have been following my journey. You may not be on my socials. You may not be in my personal life where you see the mix of the person that I am. So if you came through the Psych Gym brand and you went to the website, you'll see I got purple hair. You'll read a little bit about me to see that I'm fairly multidimensional and I love to just learn new things. But I think it was brought up to me by somebody in session. I think there's a part that maybe needs to get strengthened. And maybe by the time this podcast comes out, it will have been done. Or it won't because I'm moving. Anyway, the deep spirituality part of me. So for those of you who are like, you cringe when you hear the word spirituality because it hasn't been something that has worked out for you, I want you to kind of like pause that for a second and just listen and see if you can hear something a little bit differently. So when I'm sitting in sessions, I am an intuitive counselor. And when I say I'm an intuitive counselor, it means that I use my intuition. I use the things that people will call gifts to work in that space. And sometimes that means that I will get hung up on a word and I'll have to talk about that. Sometimes I will just kind of naturally start to talk about something and my client will go, "Oh my God, how did you know that? This is what I was just talking about." Or, "Wow, I haven't thought about that in a million years, but I see why that connects. Here's the thing that happened and that's why it's related." And so it's not like I sit down and do it in a traditional sense of what you would think of somebody who's acting as an intuitive. It's definitely very flowy. It's very covert. A lot of people don't know what's happening. I'm the one that knows what's happening, though. I can tell the difference between when I'm in my brain and when I'm just kind of like receiving a message that I don't get, but I'm just supposed to relay it. And for some people, that's a little bit weird, right? Like they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Right. But on the other hand, you're here, you're listening to me. So you see that like there's some value to what I have to say. And that's the point of this podcast. I want people today to think about spirituality differently. I don't want you to think of it as a scale of yes or no. I want you to think of it as a spectrum, as most things on this earth are a spectrum, and think about it as being deeply personal to you. I feel like it's very difficult to live a good and happy life without some kind of spiritual connection. And when I say that, I don't mean religious connection. I don't mean spiritual practices necessarily, but something that feels like you're connected to something other than you, right? Some people it's nature, and you are allowed to, you will allow yourself in nature to feel a different connectivity, a different wavelength, something that cleanses your day, your feelings, your mind, right? That all counts. And I think that that's something that gets overlooked when people talk about spirituality. Not everybody wants to be Deepak Chopra. Like, not everybody wants to be Dr. Joe Dispenza. Not everybody wants to be, that deep into what feels like the ethers. But you don't have to be in order to receive the benefits of it. And that's what I try to do in my space, right? Like, is I want people that feel like your connectivity is personal, but I want you to have it. And so we'll work on that. And sometimes I have to, tread lightly because people don't want to be overloaded with information and, just things that don't matter to them, to be honest. Like, unless you want to go on a spiritual journey, like, it doesn't really help when people just kind of talk spiritual journey at you. You have to want to be on it and you have to be eased into it, I think sometimes. You have to be kind of led over there to look at it and see if it's for you. So for some of you, I feel like this is an important moment to pause and reflect on, do I feel that? Do I feel a connection to something that is energizing or that feeds me, that is beyond me? When I used to work in addictions, we would talk about, because whenever I had to lead the spirituality group, man, it did not matter. Every single time we opened it up, there was somebody that was like, I'm not talking about God because God put me here and that's not a good God, right? And I'd be like, man, I get you, I feel you, but we are not going to talk about God today unless you want to talk about God. If somebody here identifies their connection with spirituality with a connection with a thing named God, they're just using the word God. What the word God represents is energy. What the word God represents is outside of me. So if all you've got is to look at that tree and say, I didn't make that tree grow. That tree grew without me, and it's very magical. I don't even know how that tree got here. None of this is explained, right? And if you can kind of bring yourself into that space, then you allow yourself to realize that the locus of focus, um, on just you and your little world and the things you need to control and all of that kind of stuff, you don't have to do that, right? Like, so you can just kind of look around and be like, wow, like my world is my world, but man, the world itself is big, and then the galaxy is big, and all of that kind of stuff. It's just a way to kind of keep us from the minutia of the day, keep us away from feeling like just our moment on this earth is it, because there's so much going on around us that we're not even paying attention to. And that is an intentional practice for a lot of people to handle their nervous system, to calm their nervous system, to create some peace within their nervous system on a regular basis so that it's easier for them to move through things. That to me was an important distinction to make. And so I brought it up for the podcast today. Now, if you feel like you have no connectivity to anything outside of you that feels good, I want you to sit, and I'm going to give you some actionable stuff because it's part of my new approach here. Is I'm like, you're calling it the psych gym, but you're not really giving people actionable things, right? Like worst trainer ever. How are we going to flex a muscle? I want you to sit and think about a time where you did have wonder, where you did feel maybe there's some instances in your life where you felt serendipity or you felt something that you're like, wow, that is like really amazing that that happened. And I had nothing to do with it that I can think of, right? Things that feel like they lined up exactly the way that they needed to, even if everything went wrong prior to that. And just kind of think about how that could have happened, right? Sometimes we think about energy. Sometimes what you need to do is think about your connection with other people. That can feel spiritual, right? You can think of your soul connections with the people that really light you up and you're like, there's just something about them, right? And that's what we're talking about, is that something. That something that doesn't exist with the person right next to them, but it exists with that person. That's pretty freaking magical and unexplainable, really, when we get into it, right? Because we'll start to put words to it, but those words can describe another person and you still won't feel that about that person. So it's not about the words, it's about their energy and the way that you connect to their energy. It's pretty magical. And it's really just kind of meant to drag us out of the mundane, everyday, in our body stuff and kind of put us just a little bit more outside of it so that we can feel like there's possibility, so that we can feel like there might be something different. Because so many people are still stuck in the mindset of, this is just the way that it is for me. This is just how it has to be for me. Well, this is what I did in my life and this is what I deserve. And it's like simply not true. It's not going to be easy if you dig yourself a hole and fall in it, right? Like it's going to be a little bit harder than if you were not in the hole, but it's not impossible. Everything is possible. It's just a lot of training ourselves to believe in something else, training ourselves to believe that we can do things differently, that we have ability, that we have connectivity that can help us get there. All of that kind of stuff is very spirit driven, right? Like it's something you got to grasp for that you just can't quite see. You have to believe in it. That's spirit, right? Like when you're having faith in something or you're crossing your fingers, that is you trying to connect to like whatever it is. Like, hey, fingers crossed, whatever it is that does the thing when I cross my fingers, you're who I'm connecting to. That. If we do that a lot, like I've never encountered anybody and I've never counseled anybody that when they did that, things got worse. Things have always gotten better. And so that's why I continue to make it part of my practice that, you know, even on a very small level, we're trying to find ways to like get into our spirit and not just be in our body and not just be in our mundane or the reality, right? Like, oh, we have to live in reality. Like, man, reality is a construct. Reality can change tomorrow. You can change it tomorrow. So what is reality other than something that's influenced by energy? You know? So, hey, you want to be the influencer today? Let's see. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can actually influence something, right? With energy and, you know, belief. So, yeah, I just felt like I want that to be part of this podcast. I don't want everything to be just psychology and do this thing and then you'll be good at it. I want there to be that element of wonder and belief systems and, you know, spirituality and connecting to things that just don't need to be explained. I don't need to explain it. You know, like there are times where people are like, what is it that's giving you the message? I'm like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a name. I don't need a name because that's not what I do. Like, I'm here to do the processing of things, and I'm here to bring people to different awareness levels and, that kind of stuff. So I don't need that information. It's not important to me. I've learned how to let go and just accept that it exists and be appreciative of it and use it because it's here. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that with y'all. And hopefully it gives you a little bit of food for thought for yourself. If you feel highly detached from spirituality of any kind, I want you to really think about that. I want you to think about whether or not that really is serving you in your life in the way that you want to really, really want to live. And if you don't want to live the way that you want to live, I also don't want you to overthink it and think, man, if I start to do some spiritual practices, am I going to be standing on my head and losing all my friends? Absolutely not. Right? Like there's a spiritual practice for every group. When you actually think about it, there is a spiritual practice for every group. The roughneck cowboys pray to God, right? Like, that's a spiritual practice. We don't think of it as weird woo woo, right? Like we think of it as like, what we've been taught to think of it as, in Christianity. So yeah, I just wanted you to kind of think about that. It doesn't have to look a certain way, but it has to just be for you the way that you feel. And there's many different ways that you can connect to it. Sometimes people will do it through meditation, right? Like sometimes people will do it through doing different things. I know that here in Myrtle Beach, they have the Mind Zero, which is a cold plunge, a sauna and a cold plunge. And so it's like, just this extreme temperature thing that brings people into a different state of awareness and in consciousness. And so that does something for them, right? People who are deeply moved by music, that is you connecting to the frequency of the music, because if not everybody feels it, it's you and the energy, it's you and the whatever it is, right? That is a spirit moment for you. It's connecting to your soul. And so you could use that tool for your good, right? Like you can say, all right, how can I manipulate music to manipulate myself? Right? And how does it manipulate myself? How do I manipulate myself with music, and in helpful ways and maybe unhelpful ways? Knowing that about yourself and your connectivity through your soul and your spirit. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions or if you want to work with me, check out the website and drop me a line. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. Love y'all. Thanks for listening. To learn more about what I do and how to work with me, head to thepsychgym.com to check it out. Keep lifting, y'all. It's worth it.